Let's set the scene. Picture you're an artist, or creator of some kind. You've made some successful works in the past and you want to create something new. You begin to push yourself and your project slowly grows from something akin to your previous works to something new. You even push yourself a little further, only to realize your aspirations have gotten the better of you and you need the extra support, which, as luck would have it, comes to you, but at a price. You leave the safety of familiarity behind and find yourself trying to continue creating your art but in an entirely new medium. Your goal hasn't changed though. Your vision is clear, you just want to make something you'd enjoy, knowing that if it's fun for you, then other people will definitely find it fun as well. It comes down to the last few days, and finally your art is ready. It's left your hands and is in the wider world. You take a moment to breathe, you might even have plans for what you'll do next. Suddenly you hear that your art is taking the world by storm at a level you'd never have expected. You wanted people to have fun. You wanted them to enjoy themselves with your work, but this situation is something you've never even dreamed of. Now the world knows your name. The world knows your art and they want more. The people who provided you with the resources to make your art are even asking for more. What would you do? Bungie found themselves in this exact scenario after the release of Halo Combat Evolved, a game that a lot of people weren't expecting much from and were expecting other Xbox launch titles to have the spotlight, only for this console shooter to take the world by storm. A feat that was practically unheard of at the time. A new console coming out to face down Nintendo and Sony probably seems like suicide, but Microsoft came out swinging with several killer games to its name, and its silver bullet was undoubtedly Halo Combat Evolved. And now everyone wanted more. They wanted more of Master Chief. They wanted more of Cortana. More of the Covenant, the Flood, the Forerunners. This was Bungie's challenge, to surpass themselves, to make a Halo game better than Combat Evolved, to push themselves further than they've gone before. Their challenge was to make Halo 2. So, Combat Evolved sold over 5 million copies. I think it would be entirely fair to say that game was a success, and although some members of Bungie had wanted to follow it up, the choice to make Halo 2 came after Microsoft themselves asked Bungie to follow up Combat Evolved with a sequel, and so the team pretty much immediately got to work. The plan was simple: make a Halo game that was bigger and better than Combat Evolved, which honestly wasn't simple. That's a monumental task. Combat Evolved had revolutionized console gaming, and Bungie had convinced themselves that, yeah, they can do better. They had ideas that they cut from their first game. There were a few plans on where the direction the story could go. There were going to be more weapons, vehicles, enemy types, levels of which Bungie wanted each one to feel distinct and unique. Bungie was on the move. Their first order of business? Remaking the entire engine and changing the physics. Alright, starting off small then, Bungie. Okay. One of the major goals for the company was to improve the multiplayer experience. The few people who got to experience Halo Combat Evolved's multiplayer absolutely loved it. And Bungie was aiming to allow more people to access that game mode with Xbox Live, a subscription service that could connect separate people's Xboxes together over the internet. If Bungie could get this to work with Halo 2, this could end up being one of the greatest additions to Halo, and could even be one of the main reasons for people to buy into Xbox Live in the first place. After all, people loved Halo CE's multiplayer, why wouldn't they love Halo 2's? So there was going to be more maps, bigger maps, more players, and it almost came at the cost of smaller maps and split screen, which was only just kept in by designer Max Hoberman, who was then put as the lead on developing the smaller maps, while the rest of Bungie worked on a mode called Warfare. A massive multiplayer mode with squad-based and objective-based combat between people playing as Spartans and elites and... that is oddly familiar. On top of this, multiplayer would have a plethora of features such as messaging and friends list, which are features people take for granted now, but they didn't exist in the base Xbox Live at the time. These were features made from the ground up specifically for Halo 2. Bungie wanted to make the online couch, and these features and modes would allow people from around the world to experience the same feelings and moments that originally people with CE could only experience if they hooked up several Xbox controllers to a single machine or several Xboxes to each other. As for the story, as you'd expect, the plan was to go bigger and better. The main part of Halo 2's story would be centered on the Covenant finally finding Earth and Master Chief doing his best to defend humanity's final stronghold against the unstoppable alien force. But along this narrative lead, Joseph Staten wanted to provide the player with a secondary angle of the war as well, seeing things from the Covenant's perspective. Despite that, I think it was pretty clear where Bungie wanted its audience to pay attention to, as all the marketing at the time showed glimpses of the Battle of Earth. This was going to be a game about humanity's final stand, about the unthinkable possibility that was brought up at the beginning of Combat Evolved coming to pass. This would be about you, as the Master Chief, fighting off an immense alien threat on home soil. And at E3 2003, Bungie gave the world its first glimpse at Halo 2's story, a demo showing people one of the many levels that the game had to offer, A live feed that would, as Sergeant Johnson put it, have no smoke and mirror bullshit. And frankly, the demo was incredible. It showed off the new Earth environments, a new Covenant enemy type, a new type of burst fire precision weapon known as the battle rifle, and vehicle jacking. A gameplay technique that was inspired by the Grand Theft Auto games and has now woven itself into the blood of Halo. Everything looked amazing. People couldn't wait to get their hands on Halo 2. There was just one small problem. Everything here was smoke and mirrors. Although it may have been presented as a live feed of someone playing the game, it was of course heavily scripted. And rightfully so. If the player deviated even slightly from the path, the demo would crash. This engine the game was running on was incredibly unstable and completely unsuited to the Xbox. But still, at least it showed off some fun new stuff. There was the battle rifle, the new Warthog type with a Gauss cannon, vehicle jacking, new stationary turrets, dual-wielding weapons such as the SMG, and a completely new Covenant infantry type to fight against. Brutes. Thuggish, ape-like aliens that, while definitely stronger than the grunts and jackals we see in the demo, they don't seem as strong as the elites of the previous game. As for the elites of Halo 2, they're held for the final big cutscene, and these guys look fantastic, given the appropriate attention that the Covenant's best units deserve. And the new aesthetics, the new Marines in this look for Earth. Chef's kiss. Surely this was a fantastic taste of what's to come. Well, not exactly. Bungie had let their aspirations get the better of them. They aimed for so much bigger and so much better that it was practically unachievable. Their new engine was basically being held together by the raw power of Bungie's wishful thinking. They didn't nearly have enough time to get everything they wanted into the game, and they barely had enough time to balance and fine-tune what they already had. The game was in a messy state, so Bungie had to make a series of hard calls. So many weapons and aspects of the game were changed to the point that how certain enemies behave and how certain weapons act in the demo are not representative of the final product at all. And most crushingly of all, the entire level Bungie had shown off at E3 2003 had to be cut, along with several other levels such as the inside of a Covenant carrier over Earth, and several new enemy types as well, such as Flood Juggernauts and the Covenant Drinol. Halo 2 was basically gutted and reshaped to a point that was almost unrecognizable from what was promised in 2003. Bungie was distraught. At some point, even the project leads left the production of the game, leaving the choices to be made by a committee. And Microsoft wasn't helping either. Earlier they had really wanted to push Halo 2 out the door along with the Xbox Live service, but there was no way Bungie was going to finish Halo 2 for 2002. Despite this, many of Microsoft's execs had said that Bungie would just have to release a broken game in order to make this deadline, and they only backed down after Microsoft Studios head, Ed Fries, threatened to quit if Bungie was forced to release early. Think about that. Think about the state Halo was in 2003, and for Microsoft to say they wanted that game ready in 2002. If there's anything that stuck out to me during my research of what Halo 2's development was like, it's just how despondent and depressed the Bungie employees look. Even when just reminiscing about having to make the game. They know it was a mess. Some of them sound like they think they failed for delivering a game that didn't have everything they had hoped and promised. It must have been a truly grim situation. To get the game ready for a 2004 release, Bungie employees had what's described as the mother of all crunches to get this game in a decent state, no doubt placing even more stress on the employees. As it turns out, having to follow in the footsteps of Halo Combat Evolved is no small feat, and Bungie had fallen victims to themselves as well as the expectations placed upon them. It came down to the last few days. Weapons and enemies were reworked, bugs were fixed, the multiplayer tested, and just like that, it was all over. 9th of November 2004. Halo 2 releases. The stress, the mistakes, the broken promises, all made for a disappointing launch. Halo 2 simply could not live up to Combat Evolved, and the once joyous and excited crowds had turned into miserable and disappointed husks after exposing themselves to this game. Halo 2 had failed. Is what I'd say if I were living in some crazy bizarro dimension. Of course Halo 2 didn't fail, Halo 2 killed it! I don't know how they did it. I really don't know. This could have been one of the most famous video game flop stories ever, especially with all that backstory, and instead the Phoenix rose from the ashes and Bungie did their damn best to save what they had, and it succeeded. Halo 2 sold 2.4 million copies and made $125 million in its first day. That outgrossed Pirates of the Caribbean 2. How? How did you do that? You beat a movie, a highly anticipated sequel to a great movie with Disney's backing no less. And despite being released a few years after Xbox Live, Halo 2 was considered the reason to get that subscription service. The multiplayer was amazing. I'd happily say better than Combat Evolved's in every way. Review sites gave it perfect scores on 9 out of 10s. I mean, really wrap your head around all that. Nearly everything I said about the development could be said about so many games in recent memory. It all could be said about Anthem, and look at Anthem! Now look at Halo 2! Oh my god. Bungie, you're miracle workers. So let's do what I did last time and get into that story, eh? Let's see that incredible battle as Master Chief sets out to save Earth from a Covenant invasion. Let's see what's largely regarded as one of the best Halo campaigns of all time. Okay, and I'm actually going to do something here. I'm going to say, if you have access to Halo 2 and haven't played the campaign yet for some reason, go play it first. I am not kidding. I don't want to spoil some stuff that happens in this game, and I don't know if there's any other Halo game I'd give this same warning to. All the others I'd say you could easily enjoy if you know what's coming, but Halo 2? That must be experienced with fresh eyes. Alright, I'm going to talk about Halo 2 now. Let's get to it! We open up with a broken and burned Halo. A destroyed reminder of the adventures we previously had in Combat Evolved as a new type of Covenant ship flies past, leading the camera to a massive superstructure with innumerable Covenant carriers and cruisers orbiting it. This station is given a name in the corner, the Covenant Holy City, High Charity. Inside the Holy City, we're dropped into the middle of a trial. An elite zealot stands before counselors of his own species and a completely new alien species, these clearly holding a position of power even above the elites. The zealot is filling in the hierarchs, these three prophets here, on what happened in the previous game. Apparently this was the guy in charge of the Covenant forces stationed on Halo, and of course, that means he bears the blame for the installation's destruction. The Covenant refer to the Halo as a sacred ring, referencing that tidbit spoken about in Combat Evolved where the Covenant considered the Halo to be religiously significant and... Hey, wait a minute, the Covenant is speaking English? Yeah, in Combat Evolved, the only species that spoke English were the Grunts because they were a vehicle for comedy. The elites didn't need to speak English because they were meant to be big scary aliens. But here, we see just how well spoken, verbose, and quite eloquent the elites can be, often speaking in almost a Shakespearean manner. This gives the Covenant a lot more personality in the first few seconds than Combat Evolved ever really provided the faction in its entirety. And as it will turn out later, being able to understand the Covenant is going to be pivotal. Anyway, these prophets and elites are holding this zealot responsible for the destruction of Halo. He pleads that his focus was rightfully on the Flood rather than humanity, meaning there was little chance for him to react to Master Chief. Also, quick note, they call the Master Chief Demon, which is pretty goddamn cool. You are considered so dangerous and so much of a problem to this religious organization, they've branded you as the devil. Back to the Zealot, he's sentenced to punishment and branded a heretic, showing off the Brutes, that new alien race from the demo. We don't see much of them here, but it's pretty clear they'll be serving as the muscle of the Covenant as they seem to tower over the already pretty imposing elites. And so, with the recounting of previous events over, we move to Earth and one of the many defense platforms in orbit, in which we are reintroduced to the Master Chief in his brand spanking new armor. The Mark 6 looks wonderful, and even though I'm personally more partial to the Mark 5, I can't deny just how great this armor looks and just how iconic it's become. And as we test it out, we're reintroduced to Sergeant Johnson? Yeah, if you remember in Halo C, you'd occasionally bump into this Marine Sergeant, you have to help him on his squad out. But last we saw of him, he was in the middle of a swarm of Flood, or hugging an elite right next to the Pillar of Autumn as it exploded if you want to consider that cutscene canon. But here he is, strolling around in the new suit. Hell, even the other Marines are confused, but apparently the tale of how he escaped is classified. So Johnson gives us a brief tour of the defense platform, showing off Earth and the rest of the stations before delivering us to a ceremony. Yeah, starting to realize I've been talking this entire time about basically the first two cutscenes, so let's quickly cover this. We're given some wonderful juxtaposition and clever cutting back and forth with the Zealot's public torture and Master Chief's award ceremony. As the elites electrified and branded, Johnson and Chief are given medals, and the daughter of Captain Keyes, Miranda Keyes, is given the medal that would have been given to her father had he survived. Cortana is reintroduced and detects slip space jumps. The Covenant have found Earth. Chief needs a weapon. Game starts. Much like how Combat Evolved opened with you getting used to your main two weapons, the Assault Rifle and Magnum, Halo 2 will immediately present you with the two weapons that will be a mainstay of your arsenal, the Battle Rifle and Submachine Gun. Both feel like an evolution of the Assault Rifle in some way. The Battle Rifle clearly adopted its older sibling's shape and feel, what with the ammo counter and curved rail, but the BR occupies a niche that previously only the Sniper Rifle was in: precision weaponry. The BR has a free round shot and finds itself extremely useful in middle range combat and beyond. The SMG is your automatic weapon for this game, except it's like trying to control a bucking bronco. This is the first weapon in the game that introduces some kind of recoil as it gradually drags Master Chief's line of sight upward. You really have to wrestle with this gun to get it to hit a target, but with how fast it shoots, the reward is definitely worth it. And on top of that, the game gives you a new mechanic to explore: dual wielding. Any of the smaller weapons, be they human or Covenant, can be held in both hands, and it is amazing. such a cool addition. It allows you to mix and match between weapons. You can be stripping shields with a trusty old plasma rifle and immediately riddling your enemies with bullets with the SMG. Control 1 SMG was like being on a bucking bronco, 2 is like trying to fight an earthquake. But of course you're getting twice the amount of bullets, so definitely worth it. So those two are replacements for the assault rifle. What about the pistol? That good old god tier handy weapon that was always by your side in CE. It's trash, don't use it! Using a pistol in Halo 2 is the equivalent of poking someone to get their attention. So you grab your BR and SMGs or pistol if you're insane, and wait as the door is slowly cut down and BAM! The Covenant are back. You're reintroduced to the most important duo of the games, Grunts and Elites, and very little has changed. Grunts are still small and cowardly, Elites are still large and in charge. Kill an Elite, the Grunts flee. This mission is very reminiscent of the first mission of Halo CE, but it's noticeably more alive. The first bit of the Pillar of Autumn was a great showcase of what the factions are like and tells little stories about both sides. But Cairo Station feels like it does that the entire way through. Seeing Earth through the window, seeing the boarding crafts of the Covenant flying towards the station, the battle raging on around you. It's a natural evolution of the Pillar of Autumn. Though of course we're treated to corridors of metal, it occasionally grants us sections of foliage and elevation, with more windows looking out to Earth and the battle beyond the station rather than running through similar corridors. And the game also grants the player mounted turrets at certain sections to just clean through Covenant forces. The Covenant can deploy their own turrets and use them against you, so it's best to keep your eye out for stray grunts running for the plasma turret. You might even get lucky and take out the grunt gunner before he's even deployed the turret. It's just as great an introduction to combat in Halo 2 as the Pillar of Autumn was in Combat Evolved. As you fight your way through the Cairo, the Marines draw your attention to the window and you all watch as the other defense stations begin blowing up. Earth's defenses are being cut down before your very eyes. Cortana theorizes that the Covenant must have brought a bomb on board, so now it's your job to find out where's the bomb aboard Cairo and take out any Covenant forces still aboard the station. As you go on, the game reacquaints you with a lot of weapons from the previous games, such as plasma rifles, plasma pistols, and even the shotgun, along with reintroducing the old Covenant colored ranking system, which makes them just as colorful as before. But something is definitely different. You see, in Combat Evolved, you had to worry about your shields and your health. If your shields went down, you'd start taking damage to your health, and if that went down, you'd die. Your shields would recharge after some time, but you'd need health packs if you want to bring your health back up. But in Halo 2, the health system is completely dropped in favor of just shields. They'll recharge faster, but after a few shots with them stripped, you will go down. It makes for easier health management, I suppose, but seeing as the Covenant's time to kill has been drastically reduced since Combat Evolved, I'd say, if anything, it makes the gameplay harder. And oh my god, I'm in space. I'm in space! I can jump around really high and the elites have jetpacks. Woo! This first mission is great, it gives us everything. Oh Christ, what's that? Beetles! Beetles everywhere! So this hellish experience is our introduction to a new member of the Covenant, the drones. They're fairly easy to kill and only come with the weaker weapons of the Covenant, but the amount of drones that come pouring out from every crevice of the map can almost immediately overwhelm a player. Plus, they can fly. It's a nightmare to keep track of all of them, and it adds a new kind of encounter to the Covenant along with the jetpack elites. As hellish as they can be, they're a welcome addition to the sandbox. Anyway, Chief carries on. You see a massive Covenant ship fly right by and you find the bomb. And now we get one hell of a cutscene. Master Chief deactivates the bomb. Keyes wants to pursue the carrier, but there's too many Covenant ships in the way. So Master Chief has a plan to help. Give the Covenant back their bomb.
Just one question. What if you miss?
I won't.
Oh, that's so cool. What an introduction. It's like the Pillar of Autumn, but ramped up to 11. We're given the essentials of infantry combat and a few extras like the shotgun and space combat. We're reintroduced to the elites and grunts, but we also see the Covenant has more to offer like rangers and drones. The main players are set up: Master Chief, Cortana, Miranda Keyes, and the man, the myth, the legend, Sergeant Johnson. While Johnson felt like a pretty likable reoccurring Marine in Combat Evolved, I'd easily say Halo 2 is the game that made Johnson. Johnson was pretty good in Combat Evolved, but the man becomes an icon in Halo 2. Incredibly likable and infinitely quotable, as we see in the next mission's opening.
The message just repeats. Regret, regret, regret.
PATRON, any idea what it means?
Dear humanity, we regret being alien masters. We regret coming to Earth.
And we most definitely regret the Corps just blew up our raggedy-ass fleet! Hoorah!
So here we are, taking the fight to Earth. The single cruiser that made it through has one of the Prophet Hierarchs on board, one of the most important figures of the Covenant. So if Chief can take him out, the Covenant will definitely be shaken. But a Covenant Prophet on Earth with so few ships? Something's not right here. Man, this game won't stop, will it? So you're shot out of the sky by whatever that was, and you'll have to regroup with whatever Marine forces you can, leading to several skirmishes on the streets of the African city of New Mombasa. Can I just say, New Mombasa as a setting feels like a great choice. Every time the aliens invade in movies, or hell, even in most games, it feels like they touch down in America or, if you're lucky, Russia. But in Halo, the Covenant touched down in Africa of all places. It's a different locale, and the sandy brown textures and stone buildings offer different visuals to what we had in Halo CE. Anyway, the streets are far more claustrophobic than Cairo was, or hell, anything in CE was either. And they're filled with jackals, offering more variety to combat encounters as they follow squads of grunts and elites into battle. You're first granted the turret defense section in the courtyard as swarms of Covenant grunts, jackals, drones, and elites come rushing at you until a pelican arrives. Nothing too bad, jackals are still a little annoying, but you can handle this. Right, okay, that's a little more challenging and far earlier than I expected hunters to show up, but hey, remember CE? A good shot in the back end, you'll be fine. Ah, I see. Yeah, the hunters have been revamped and they won't be going down as easy as they did before, but with a little persistence they'll still go down. Right, okay, it can't get much worse than that, right?
Sergeant, I need you on that bird.
Now,
These delightful boys, these wonderful, wonderful creatures, these will be the biggest threats to you. A jackal, without any shields, all by himself, but with the goddamn beam rifle. These guys, they've got pinpoint accuracy, the spatial awareness of a god, and have the Covenant's version of a sniper rifle. I take it back. The drones aren't hellish, these guys are. Oh, you know how I said they're all by themselves? That was a lie. They're all dotted around the place on rooftops, blending in better than elites with active camouflage, and the only hint they'll ever leave to tell you where they are is a trail from their sniper rifles, which odds are you'll only see after it's carved a hole for you. What fun! These guys really are terrors, and their reputation in the community reflects that. The Jackal Sniper is a devil, especially on Legendary difficulty, but killing them gives you the beam rifle, which can offer you a faster rate of fire at the expense of having to cool down if you fire off too quickly. I kinda love this gun, it just looks great. Getting out of the streets reveals the city in the distance, and now Halo 2 gives you a Warthog, reintroducing you to vehicle combat. And the Warthog feels pretty different. It doesn't slide around as much, it feels like you're more in control of the vehicle. It's a welcome change. And what's more, vehicles are not almost entirely indestructible or tied to your health now. They can and will blow up. And Bungie clearly had fun with that, because look how the Covenant vehicles violently detonate when you destroy them. It's wonderful. The sound design, the visuals, the fact that the shattered fragments of Ghost and Wraith fling up into the sky is magical. I love it. The vehicle part offers several sections of beach to roll through and clean up Covenant forces, and while it definitely feels more linear than the first Warthog section of CE, it makes up for it in spectacle. Instead of just dropping off troops like the CE Covenant dropship, the new Phantom dropship will actually hang around and attempt to take you out. While you can't destroy a Phantom, you can shoot its turrets off and render it unable to attack. All the while, Ghosts and elite drop pods are deployed all around you, making for one hectic drive along the beach. Also, just quickly, I'm once again going to compliment the skybox. There's no Halo ring in the sky, so Bungie had to do their best to make it interesting, and just look at it. Look at that Covenant carrier hovering there menacingly. It's lovely. Lovely in an incredibly foreboding way, but You know what I mean, art good. As you enter the tunnels, Cortana proposes that the Covenant might not have known humanity was on Earth, raising more questions as to why a prophet would come to this planet. Oh yeah, I almost forgot that's still out there. So after getting out of the tunnels, you're treated to a new objective. Take out the Scarab. And to help you along the way, Sergeant Johnson has some words of encouragement and a tank. Another little detail I love is the speech Johnson will deliver at this point in the game will be different depending on the difficulty. This is something that appeared in CE in the beginning cutscene with Johnson, and it feels like a nice reward and callback for playing on high difficulties, as he provides cooler speeches depending on the difficulty. And you'll need that moment of levity if you're playing on Legendary, trust me. And regardless of difficulty, rolling across the bridge in Halo 2 Scorpion is sublime. Ghosts and wraiths shatter before you, banshees taken out of the sky, the music plays that heart-pounding main theme. It's fantastic. This section makes you feel like a god. It's moments like these that make you realize why the Covenant regard you as a demon. After that, you're approached by a Marine who offers you her shotgun, and I gotta say, these interactions with the Marines and how they seem far more talkative and important than they were in CE warms me to them even more. You might have noticed that their appearance has changed. They've gone from a silvery brown armor to a more modern and grounded military green camo with a hint of sci-fi armor. I honestly far prefer this look for the Marines. And the variety of voices we get from them, so many different nationalities and both men and women serving. It really feels like you're fighting for all of mankind, and rightfully so. You're on Earth. It's all of us against all of the Covenant. Speaking of interactions with Marines, as you come to a clearing, a Marine drifts into view with a Warthog and asks for you to hop on the gun. This serves to introduce the player to the new Warthog, the Gauss Hog, armed with a far more powerful laser cannon where you hold the right trigger to sentence whatever you're looking at to death. Wraiths, ghosts, jackal snipers, all are rendered unto dust by the mighty Ghost Hog. If you can't tell, I'm loving these new additions to the Halo world. Wow, this mission has really made me feel great. I feel like I could take on anything.
When I asked for reinforcements, I didn't think they'd send a Spartan.
We got trouble.
No, I'm not taking that back. I can take on anything. With this music, the rocket launchers, the Marines beside me, yeah, I'm ready to fight this Scarab. And it's such a great experience, funneling the Scarab through a series of buildings, taking down the onboard defense crews, and then jumping aboard to take out the rest and finish the Scarab off from the inside. This mission. Wow, this mission. It just feels bigger than anything Combat Evolved offered. Earth is a unique vista, and while the sandy brown textures may begin to become a little repetitive, just how many locations there are to New Mombasa and the ways presented to explore them make the city such a delight to crawl through. The Covenant are even more terrifying than they were in CE, and yet the game provides you with the means to feel just as much of a horror to them as they can be to you. The Battle of Earth is shaping up to be a great experience, but the Prophet's ship seems to be on its way out. A slip-space rupture appearing off the bow, Keyes won't risk losing the Prophet and chases after him. Johnson, Chief, and Cortana are being extracted to the ship in amber clad, and zoom after the Covenant carrier, threading the needle and disappearing into the carrier's slip-space portal as it leaves behind only destruction. What a way to end this mission. I can't wait to see what's coming next. Wait, what was this? Alright, so the Zealot from the start is back. Looks like the Prophets aren't going to execute him, they want him to execute this other elite. Oh sweet, that's some cool looking armor.
You know where we are.
The mausoleum of the Arbiter.
The
Quite
Arbiter?
so. Here rests the vanguard of the great journey. Every Arbiter from first to last. Each one created and consumed in times of extraordinary crisis.
The taming of the Hunters, the Grunt Rebellion. Were it not for the Arbiters, the Covenant would have broken long ago.
Wait, there was a Grunt Rebellion? There was a taming of the Hunters? And this single guy with the title of Arbiter did that?
The tasks you must undertake as the Arbiter are perilous, suicidal. You will die, as each Arbiter has before you. The Council will have their corpse.
What would you have your Arbiter do?
This is some pretty neat development we're getting on the Covenant. We're even getting characters set up. I'm enjoying this. This elite sounds cool. He's missing 2 of his mandibles as well. How did that happen? But this cutscene is going on pretty long just to set up what? Excuse me? Alright, you can play as the Covenant. You're playing as an elite. You have elite buddies, you have grunt buddies, and what's more, you have... Finally! The energy sword is usable now. This entire section of the game, it's just beautiful, okay? I love this twist. Halo 2 just pulls a Metal Gear Solid 2 and says, alright, you played a bit of the Chief. Now here's something new, and for that something new to be the Arbiter, a Covenant elite. What's more, it recontextualized that opening. You know the Zealot will probably end up being important later down the line, but most people might assume this is some kind of villain origin story. He's been disgraced by the Master Chief, he burned Reach, and he led the Covenant forces against humanity on Halo. This would have been a serviceable bad guy origin story, but it's not a villain origin story. It's a protagonist origin story. Arbiter scenes also serve to give more character and history to the Covenant. Through the Arbiter, we know more about the religious aspect of the Covenant. We know more about their lore and parts of their past, such as the taming of the Hunters and the Grunt Rebellion, as mentioned beforehand. And I think most importantly, we see they aren't all mustache-twirling villains. Artas here, the Spec Ops commander or half-jaw, whatever you prefer, his speech isn't just, "Haha, today men, we will bathe in blood and kill as many people as possible. Remember to raid and pillage and kill anything that moves." It's more akin to one of Johnson's speeches, if Johnson was an 8-foot-tall alien lizard samurai. In fact, Artas is basically the Sergeant Johnson to Arbiter's Master Chief, and the grunts and elites alongside you are the Arbiter's Marines, and they have just as much character. Fighting alongside these units and hearing them comment on the situation is a ton of fun. It takes a mission which would already been pretty cool if you were just playing as the bad guy, and ironically humanizes the alien faction. It makes them understandable, and hell, it can make you go from relishing hunting down elites and grunts to wanting to do your best to keep your buddies alive.
It's good to get exercise.
I love them.
I love you too.
Anyway, focusing on the mission, we're brought to a Forerunner facility hovering above a gas giant, granting us a new aesthetic after a few missions being set on Earth and human locations. And here we'll be fighting heretics, ex-Covenant soldiers who have defied the prophets and beliefs of the faction. And they also look pretty cool and distinct from the other Covenant units. You're surrounded by Spec Ops elites and grunts, those best of the best soldiers that you may remember from Halo C that were called in to cleanse the Flood. And in comparison, the heretics have brown and gold armor with gas masks and large backpacks. Although we're still basically fighting the Covenant in a different skin, and only elites and grunts at that, the different environment, the new look, and the fact you're fighting alongside your own elites and grunts makes up for the drop in enemy variety. And on top of that, you get invisibility instead of a flashlight, so you have more options for stealth now. It really helps that this temporary active camo gives you the ability to single out high-ranking elites and quickly dispatch them. It offers an entirely new way to play the game, but this mission also offers a few new weapons also to experiment with. Firstly, the Energy Sword, perhaps one of the most iconic weapons of the entire franchise, is now finally in the player's hands. A single hit to kill is all that requires, and it has a devastating lunge ability. But it is of course a close range weapon and can run out of energy pretty quickly, so it's best to save it for specific targets. There's also the Covenant Carbine. Seeing as humanity is completely absent from this section of the game, there's no battle rifle, so you're provided with the Covenant's response to that weapon. The Carbine is a single-fire precision weapon, and I love the design. And the sound. It's so satisfying to use, especially to pop grunts with a headshot. But wait, there's more! Yup, the Sentinels are back and working with the heretics, and Halo 2 is the game that keeps on giving because now you get to scavenge defeated Sentinels for their parts and use their own weapons against them. The Sentinel Beam is, well, it's a beam. It's a strange gimmicky weapon, but it feels like a ton of fun to use. Is that not enough weapons that you never got to use in CE? Well, you get in the fuel rod cannon as well. Yeah, it looks pretty different to what it did in CE and operates very differently as well. Instead of there being an arc to the projectiles, they shoot straight on, basically operating as a Covenant rapid-fire rocket launcher. So it seems like while Chief's missions have been more of what you know but better, Arbiter really has been what you've wanted but couldn't had before. A whole new experience. Pushing through the facility, you'll catch a glimpse of the heretic leader saying he will protect the Oracle and flying off in a Banshee. Naturally, you have to take off after him, leading to a section where you have to escort a Phantom while in the heretic Banshee and dogfight every other aircraft you come across, while one sick-as-hell guitar riff is playing in the background. Honestly, this mission has given us so much. It's such a fantastic experience. I cannot wait to see what's next.
What is it? That stench. I've smelled it before.
Oh? Oh. No, no.
Stand firm. The Flood is upon us.
Oh god, here they come. Yep, and now to add variety back into the enemy sandbox, the Flood have escaped Halo and have returned. And now you have to juggle the Infected, the Heretics, and the Sentinels. Speaking of which, you're going to want to keep an eye out for those Sentinels. Remember how I said you can steal their weapons? Well, these things absolutely slay the Flood, and rightfully so. You can even swap weapons with fellow grunts and elites, so handing off these bad boys to your friends will help a lot in the coming battles. But the Flood have some new tricks of their own. Infection forms can now dive into the corpses of Flood you've killed and reanimate them. But hey, you can shoot their arms off, right? Funny little pet? Your pet kills itself and leaves an infection form behind to go infect something else. So you're never safe. As long as one piece of popcorn is left, it's going to find a way to kill you. And the presentation of the Flood just makes them even creepier. The dark, moody, green atmosphere. Descending the elevator as you see Flood combat forms climbing up the walls. The panicked heretics doing their best to fight you and the infected. It feels close to what we had in 343 Guilty Spark, with just a touch of the library at times. Although I have to admit, the library sections here are done way better than they were in the original mission. But because the reveal of the Flood feels a little rushed, we don't have the same time to set up the atmosphere as 343 Guilty Spark did. And because the mission here is to kill the heretic leader, the Flood are just kind of in your way. Obviously a massive threat, but Arbiter and Artas are dead set on killing this one man before the storm kills anyone left unprotected aboard the station. And just as you find him, the leader manages to shield himself away from you.
This will save me from the storm, but you will be consumed.
Arbiter, where is he? Stinking floodbait boxed himself in tight. We'll never break through this.
We shall force him out.
How?
The cable. I'm going to cut it.
Get everyone back to the ships.
And here we can see the Arbiter embracing what he's meant to be. As stated by the prophets earlier, the Arbiter is a position that elites hold to regain their honor by going on suicide missions. So this Arbiter has resigned himself to plunging the station into the heart of a gas giant and killing the heretic leader while he can. What a badass. So off you go, cutting away the cable and sending the station into freefall as ominous music plays and the force of the fall giving you the ability to super jump for a little while, scaring the heretic leader out of his hole and having him run back to the Seraph fighter craft that you might have seen earlier in the mission. After piloting a Banshee through the Maelstrom and referencing Combat Evolved, you get to the heretic leader and he has a surprise for you. Oh no, it's him. He's alive. He survived. Guilty Spark lives and apparently told these elites the truth about Halo, I assume. So these guys know it's a weapon and not whatever the Covenant thinks it may be. Huh. But the heretic leader takes a shot at the unsuspecting Arbiter and initiates his boss battle. Wait, what? There's boss battles in this game? Oh, hell yeah! Oh, okay. So anyway, we have Guilty Spark now. Is he going to tell Arbiter about what Halo is? Nope, turns out this guy, one of the Prophet of Truth's goons you might have seen in a few cutscenes, the brute chieftain Tartarus, has collected Guilty Spark and saved you from dying aboard the falling station, taking you away to some new location. These two missions have been excellent. The new weapons, the return of the Flood, and what's more, playing as the Covenant. It's been nothing short of a treat. And on top of that, the Arbiter's proved himself to be a character that may be just as cool as the Chief. And I love that you can see his partnership with Artas evolve from disdain from Artas' side to respect, stating he would save all his elites before he saved Arbiter, and then Arbiter respecting that and telling Artas to evacuate the Covenant before he begins cutting the cable. God, I can't wait to see where this goes. Oh. I almost forgot this is meant to be about the battle for Earth. Right, okay. Keys and the crew of the In Amberclad have traced the Prophet of Regret to... another Halo? No more Earth? Alright, I can work with another Halo. But the music. The reveal as debris of buildings caught in the slipspace portal move away to show the structure. The reactions from Johnson and the rest of the crew. It's an unwelcome surprise to them, but honestly I'm fine with it. And then we're treated to an orbital drop insertion, which is perhaps one of the coolest scenes in all of Halo's history.
Possibly make any more noise? I guess so.
And also, we're treated to a new kind of human ally. Orbital drop shock troopers with slick black armor. I keep saying it, but Halo 2 is the gift that keeps on giving. New enemy types, new weapons, new allies, and now we get to transition from the silvers, browns, and bronzes to the familiar greens and blues of a Halo. And once again, what a skybox. You can see the ring curving around once again, but this time there's a Covenant carrier in the sky. I'm going to take this time as well to briefly talk about the graphics. It's a considerable improvement from Halo Combat Evolved, and you can see Bungie were doing their best to make the facial animation relatable. I mean, now it might not seem, as good as what we have now, but back then it was pretty stunning work. And so continues the hunt for regret as you provided warthogs and scorpions to continue your rampage. Over ancient bridges and through Forerunner tunnels as you cut your way through this quite beautiful map in all honesty. And we get a new rank of elite to fight with lovely shiny new armor, Honor Guards. After clearing them up, we find out that the Prophet of Regret plans to... What else? Activate Halo. So the plan now is to kill Regret and steal the index from this Halo's library before the Covenant can get its hands on it. It was so easy the last time, surely it won't be a problem this time. And now the game offers us some nice moments to really appreciate the beauty of Halo between the fights, such as traveling the gondolas over the sea or even diving into the waters to see the ancient ruins below. There's some fantastic environmental design going on here. We also overhear a conversation between the three prophets. Regret apparently went to Earth without telling Truth and Mercy, and we get a hint that Truth might want Regret gone from the picture. After more scenic gondolas and underwater shuttles, we come to Regret's temple to see pretty much the entirety of the Covenant has come to Halo. It's not just one small fleet, it's hundreds. And high charity on top of that. And it's all coming for you. So you gotta kill Regret and... wait, it's another boss fight? Oh, hell... oh, okay. Alright, the Covenant are mad and they're glassing us. Get out of here, Chief. Oh god, oh god, oh god, what's that? No! Get your hands off! Now it's back to the Arbiter, and we get to see just how much your actions as Chief have affected the Covenant. The elites have effectively been demoted, and the brutes are taking their position as esteemed guards of the Prophets. Something the elites are clearly unhappy with, but the Prophet clearly cares little for it. And Truth has a new mission for Arbiter. Thanks to his mission to kill the heretic leader and securing Guilty Spark, which they call Oracle, they found out about the library and the index, and it's Arbiter's job to go get it. Arbiter is led there by Tartarus, who confirms that Regret was killed by Chief, clearly enraging Arbiter despite him saying otherwise. The person responsible for his dishonor, and now the dishonor of his entire race, is on the ring. It's a little moment of insight to the character and really pumps us up for what could happen if Chief and Arbiter were to meet. Anyway, you're brought to the Sentinel Wall and are introduced to whole new types of Sentinels, such as Golden Sentinels and the Flying Tank Enforcer. That takes quite a bit to put down. Honestly, all the new additions to each faction, be them Covenant, Sentinel, or even Flood, have been fantastic, and have really shaken up combat encounters. The variety is appreciated. So with High Charity in the sky and left by Tartarus, it's on through the Sentinel Wall to regroup with the separated Grunt and Jackal allies and fight through the Sentinels and the Flood. I guess there's been another outbreak on this Halo. Fantastic. That being said, it's an incredibly moody and atmospheric mission. The music that plays as you descend through the layers of the wall in an attempt to get to the library does an expert job at filling you with anxiety and dread. You hear Keyes' forces trying to push through the wall to claim the index. You can also hear and see the Flood cutting them down. It's become a race between the Arbiter and the humanity to get to the library, and the Forerunner forces and Flood infections stand in both your ways. But you will be getting some help. It seems the elites have decided to take matters into their own hands and have dropped down to help you retrieve the index. They'll provide you with vehicles such as the Covenant equivalent of the Warthog, the Spectre, and heavy weapons which you'll need to push through the rest of the library, because it gets worse than Sentinel Enforcers, it gets worse than Rocket Launcher Flood. The Flood have learnt to drive, and they've got Scorpions and Wraiths. This is a nightmare. Who let them drive? There's certainly a lot more going on than Combat Evolved's library, but so much is being thrown at you here. And the Flood having tanks with this difficulty probably increased the sales of heart rate medication. You go through all this to find Johnson and Keyes have gotten to the library first, and Arbiter has to take them down, which he does pretty easily. Finally, the index is his. Maybe now he can redeem the elites. Oh, hey there, Tartarus. Come to take all the credit again?
The Icon is my responsibility.
What's your responsibility? Now it is mine. A bloody fate awaits you and the rest of your incompetent race. And I, Tartarus, chieftain of the brutes, will send you to it.
When the prophets learn of this, they will take your head.
When they learn. Fool. They ordered me to do it.
What a twist. Now the elites are being cast out of the Covenant. What else can this game possibly throw at us? Ew, 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 ew! Yeah, we're introduced to this big flappy thing called the Gravemind that is the central intelligence behind all the Flood, and as it turns out, he's captured Master Chief, Arbiter, the monitor of this Halo, and he's absorbed the Prophet of Regret. And for a mass of flesh and evil, he speaks pretty eloquently. He's here to sit down Chief and Arbiter and get them to realize what needs to be done. The Covenant have the Index, and with it they can activate Halo. Chief and Cortana definitely know this is bad, but Arbiter? He's a bit more angry about being in the presence of the parasite and the guy who ruined his life. And it seems like it's going to take a little more convincing before he comes around to believing that the Halos are weapons and not some pathway to divinity like his prophets have told him. So Gravemind decides to show him the truth, telling both of them to search spots where the Index will most likely be. Master Chief is sent to High Charity itself right in front of Truth's very face, and Arbiter is sent near Halo's control room. For now, we focus on Chief's journey as he's about to experience just the worst time Halo 2 can throw at you. As soon as the game starts, 2 honor guard brutes are thrown at you. An alien you've been seeing throughout the cutscenes, but you have no experience fighting. And no matter the difficulty, you'll be thrown against the highest ranking brutes this game has to offer while you're armed with the Halo 2 Needler, which is a significant downgrade from its CE sister. This part can really kick you around if you aren't prepared, and you're likely gonna die a few times as brutes just keep pouring from every section of the council chamber, and almost every one is gonna berserk, meaning they'll just run or basically fly at you to beat you to death with their bare hands. It's a complete onslaught. Brutes are super tanky. I feel like they're more tanky than even the elites. The only upside being that as hard as they are to put down, they don't feel as smart as the elites are. But if you survive that, you'll need to chase after Truth as he has the Index, which will lead you all throughout High Charity. It's another familiar aesthetic, reminiscent of the Truth and Reconciliation, but it's noticeably more decorated and detailed with far more environments within than just purple corridors. But I doubt you'll have the time to take it on the first go because, you know, brutes. This mission is gonna feel anything but familiar though. The brutes add a whole new level of variety and bring a new weapon to the field with their grenade launcher, the Brute Shot. And on top of that, the betrayal of the elites is starting to have some consequences on High Charity. After rescuing some Marines, you'll see that High Charity is slowly falling into a civil war, as elites have splintered off from the Covenant and are fighting the brutes. And because of this, the lower ranking Covenant species are beginning to pick sides. Drones and Jackals have chosen to side with the brutes, while Grunts and Hunters have chosen to side with the elites. It's all-out war, a war you're in the middle of, and honestly, despite the intro of this mission, it's really fun to watch this play out. The Civil War allows you to choose to approach combat scenarios in so many new ways. You can choose to wait out and see what faction comes on top, or kill them all, or hell, even help out one faction. I've even done a run where I've killed no elites, grunts, or hunters and just bring them into new areas. And doing so really changes the shape of the battles going on around High Charity. I mean, they'll still try to kill you. Wow, so ungrateful. This all culminates in the battle at the Mausoleum of the Arbiter, where pretty much everything is thrown at you and each other. These moments of free faction combat add so much to Halo's gameplay and make for some memorable and entertaining moments. After this, you get a cutscene where it's shown Johnson and Keyes are in the Brute's possession and Truth passes on the Index to Tartarus, only for the Flood to arrive using In Amber Clad to crash into High Charity. The Brutes easily dispatch the infection forms, but one manages to grab the Prophet of Mercy, and before Tartarus can save him, Truth intervenes.
Let him be. The great journey waits for no one, brother. Not even you.
We really get the full extent of just how maniacal Truth is. He's orchestrated everything. He wanted Regret gone, and he's now sentenced Mercy to death. And he's managed to secure an entirely loyal guard to replace the elites who were beginning to question him. He's malicious, but the way he speaks, the way he carries himself, it's so subtly conniving. He's oddly calm and well-spoken, never raising his voice or breaking into an evil speech. Everything feels so matter-of-fact with Truth. He's a villain for sure, but he feels like a far more real character because of this. He's not twirling his mustache, he's just a politician. Anyway, back on Halo, Arbiter is thrown into the civil war between the brutes and elites as he tries to cut his way through the brute forces on the installation and meet up with the scattered elite forces. The elites again have a ton of character. I personally love this Spec Ops elite who delivers this speech about how the brutes will pay only to resign himself to disappointment when he sees a zealot coming to support them.
By the prophets, what have these brutes done? They have shed our brother's blood, and for that they must die. Sell it. So much for a stealthy advance.
Ah, over so soon?
Again, this game does wonders for the Covenant. Each species and character feels like a fully realized and understandable or even likable being at times. Especially the elites and grunts who you'll find along the way and will be helping you dispatch brutes and jackals on your path. The sheer amount of brutes thrown at you combined with the addition of sniper jackals makes for one hellish mission, especially on foot. Fortunately, you're granted a brief respite with a few vehicle sections, all leading to Arbiter coming face to face with Artas once again. The man has managed to survive all of this, and he, like the rest of his race, doesn't quite realize how deep this betrayal goes, as he assumes the brutes were acting alone and not on the Prophet's orders. Speaking of the Prophets, we cut back to Master Chief only just missing Truth, Tartarus, Johnson, and Keyes as their groups separate. Tartarus and the humans fly to Halo while Truth is heading for a Forerunner ship at the heart of High Charity to escape the Civil War and lead his fleet to Earth. And like Cortana says, if he does that, humanity won't stand a chance. So what's to be done? The Halo or Truth? Cortana suggests that she uses In Amber Clad the same way they use the Pillar of Autumn and hope that the detonation takes out High Charity and Halo with it if it comes close to activation, while Chief follows Truth. Cortana, however, will have to stay behind to make sure In Amber Clad can detonate, meaning Chief will have to go on alone. But before we can really come to grips with that, here come the Flood. Oh god. Yeah, it turns out the Gravemind was using us, because of course he was, to weaken High Charity and prepared for a Flood takeover. And they're doing just that. The mission is now taking on a similar aesthetic to the mission Keyes from CE, as the area shifts from purples to sickly greens, and growths and tentacles begin to appear and spread across the surface of High Charity. This is no small contagion like Halo CE was. The Flood are in full force here. Truth all the while broadcasts his voice as the Flood take High Charity, insisting that some of his brute forces stay behind to defend and take back the Covenant Holy City. He even says something quite interesting.
No enemy has ever withstood our might. The Flood too shall fail.
This sort of seems to imply that the Covenant have faced threats beyond humanity and the Flood, something that would be explored far, far later. Truth also shows us once again just how conniving he is when he broadcasts this.
Noble Mercy is here, at my side. His wise counsel ever in my ears.
The complete rat! Even the Gravemind calls him out on it as he begins broadcasting his voice in response. And so the Prophet abandons High Charity to its fate, Chief only just managing to land on the Forerunner ship before it departs, leaving the Covenant Civil War, the Flood, and Cortana behind. Chief is on his way back to Earth. Meanwhile, back on the Halo, Arbiter and Artas are discussing what to do as Tartarus lands with Keyes and Guilty Spark at the control room to activate Halo. Arbiter knows that whatever truths he's seeking will be in there, so he announces to Artas he has to get inside. Artas, being the complete bro that he is, offers his Wraith to you and reveals he has a plan to get inside. What's his plan? I like where this is going. So we're gonna take that Scarab, right, Artas? Well, not exactly. You see, there's a cruiser in the sky, and Artas has decided he really wants that cruiser, so he's gonna take it.
Yo, dude, you coming? Yeah, just hold on a minute, I want that. What? I want that. What? It's mine now. What?
So now it's your job to secure the Scarab. But how are we gonna make up for the loss of my invincible half-jaw flood-slaying buddy?
Arbiter, I thought he was dead. Hold your fire. Hunters have come to our aid, Arbiter. They will fight by our side.
This will do. So now comes a fantastic section as you slay brutes alongside goddamn hunters. Arbiter's sections are divine. It's so good to fight against these tanky as hell aliens with literal tank aliens. And it gets even better. We find a brute prison with hostage hunters and elite counselors, the very guys who declared Arbiter a heretic, now seeing just how wrong they were, and you can free them and have these sword-wielding counselors and yet more hunters on your side, fighting to get to the Scarab. But wait, humans? Johnson? Johnson, what are you doing on the Scarab?
You don't like me, and I sure as hell don't like you.
But if we don't do something, Mr. Mohawk's gonna activate this ring, and we're all gonna die.
Tartarus has locked himself inside the control room.
Well, I just happen to have a... Come on, grab a Banshee and give me some cover.
He's gonna know we're coming.
Oh, yes. The elites and humanity are working together now. Johnson and Arbiter. This is... wow. I have to reiterate this, but you play as an elite, the best of the bad guys from the first game, turning against the rest of the bad guys, siding with humanity, and now piloting a Banshee alongside Johnson, who's piloting the Scarab. This is amazing. The Scarab blows apart the entrance, allowing Arbiter and Johnson to get inside and confront Tartarus. Tartarus is in the middle of trying to get Keyes to activate Halo, only for Arbiter to actually try and convince Tartarus not to instead of just shooting him. Arbiter is here as big as he's ever been. A powerful warrior capable of the same feats as Master Chief, and yet he's a merciful and forgiving person, capable of offering a chance to the counselors who've dishonored him, the elites who've looked down on him, the humans he's fought against for so long, and even the person who betrayed him and was an instrument in the genocide of his people. And to get him to see reason and to convince him on what the Halos are, he asks Guilty Spark.
Go ahead, do your thing.
The sacred rings,
What are they?
Weapons of last resort, built by the Forerunners to eliminate potential flood hosts, thereby rendering the parasite harmless.
And those who made the rings? What happened to the Forerunners?
After exhausting every other strategic option, my creators activated the rings. They and all additional sentient life in 3 radii of the galactic center died, as planned. Would you like to see the relevant data?
Tartarus, the prophets have betrayed us. No, Arbiter! The great journey has begun, and the brutes, not the elite, shall be the prophet's escort.
The Halo is active, and Tartarus is standing in your way, refusing to see reason, either out of denial or ambition. Alright, so yeah, easy as hell boss fight time? Nope! Tartarus is gonna kick you around. He and his massive hammer are going to make you and your elite buddies become a part of the floor. Roots will jump into a system. His shields are a nightmare to take out. The 3 layers of the control room feel like a small Quake arena. Halo 2 finally gets its good boss fight. The Arbiter versus Tartarus. It's not particularly amazing, but there's more going on in the fight than the heretic leader will regret. And when it's over, it's time to stop the Halo from firing. Keyes makes it just in the nick of time as this impressive display graces us. And now all the Halos are ready to activate, waiting for a command from something called the Ark. And now the elites and humanity are allied. The Arbiter cementing their alliance by standing alongside Keyes and Johnson and dedicating himself to the fight and locating the Ark. But what about Chief? What about Earth?
Got a new contact, unknown classification.
It isn't one of ours. Take it out.
This is Spartan 117.
Can anyone hear me? Over.
Isolate that signal. Master Chief, you mind telling me what you're doing on that ship?
Sir, finishing this fight.
And that's it. That's the end. That's Halo 2. Well, there's also a cutscene that plays if you're on Legendary difficulty of a completely overrun High Charity and the Gravemind beginning to interrogate Cortana, but that's all she wrote. That's all Halo 2's story has to offer. And yeah, let's talk about what we just saw. That is one ballbuster of a cliffhanger. Definitely a side effect of how much Bungie cut from Halo 2. And though it hints at exciting opportunities, it was a painful wait for Halo 3 following this. So many questions were up in the air. Questions that, unlike Halo CE, needed answers. But let's go back to the beginning. I definitely talked a lot longer here about the story than I did for CE, but I think it's definitely worth it. Combat Evolved's story was pretty simple. You're running from an alien force and you find Halo. You fight aliens for control of the Halo in hopes you can use it against them, but a new deadly alien threat is unleashed and it's revealed that the Halo is a weapon, so you destroy it and all the aliens on its surface. Halo 2 has far more going on. An alien is being dishonored for failing to protect Halo. On the other side of the galaxy, the aliens accidentally find Earth and fight the humans for a bit before running away with the humans hot on their heels. Then we cut back to that first alien who's made an Arbiter, and then he's gonna kill the heretic leader because he doesn't believe the same religion as him, and then there's flood! There's flood everywhere! Flood in vehicles! See what I mean? You can't do it. You might have noticed that I was bigging up the Battle of Earth at the start of the video. It's definitely what Bungie was doing with the marketing and what they planned. But in the finished game, the Battle of Earth is a rather small part of the overall story. While the missions on Earth are sublime and do fulfill that desire for hectic ground-level combat on our homeworld with all the new foes to fight, vehicles to drive, and weapons to shoot, in the grand scheme of the story, Halo 2 ends up telling it's a pretty minor part. Even if it was initially the intention to have the story revolve around the Earth, it doesn't end up revolving around it in the final product. Perhaps with the missions that were cut, Earth would have played a larger role, but that's all in the realm of hypotheticals. And I can understand if anyone was frustrated or felt betrayed by that. Bungie themselves seem to promise a game about Chief punching elites on Earth, but if Halo 2 isn't about that, then what's it about? Perhaps it's about humanity discovering another Halo? Well, I wouldn't be too sure about that. The amount of missions of playing as Master Chief on the Halo are in the minority. Then is it a story focusing overall on the conflict of humanity and the Covenant? That seems more likely, but there's a number of missions where that just isn't the case. If I were to nail down what Halo 2's story is about, it would be about the splintering of the Covenant from the perspective of the elites. More specifically, from the perspective of the Arbiter. I would even go as far as to say that Halo 2's main protagonist is Arbiter himself, and that this is his game rather than him being a deuteragonist to Master Chief. The game starts with Arbiter's trial and ends with him choosing to stay allied with humanity. By definition, protagonists react to events that transpire. Nearly every event in Halo 2 leads to a consequence that is felt by Arbiter. In fact, the Master Chief serves as an antagonist of this game, as the one who initiates change. Though of course he's responding to the changes set in place by the Prophets, who are the main antagonists, His actions are always felt by Arbiter, who has to experience a world shaken by the demon, by Master Chief. Chief destroys Halo, which leads to the Arbiter being dishonored. The Prophet of Regret invades Earth, and in response, Chief finds a new Halo and kills the Prophet of Regret, which leads to Elites being demoted and Arbiter being betrayed. On top of this, Arbiter is definitely the emotional core of the story. We experience the change around him through his eyes, and we also see and feel what he and his men think about this. Chief is more of a machine. He's out to complete objectives. He kills the Prophet of Regret because that's the mission. Meanwhile, Arbiter and Artes go on a quest to prove that they're still worthy to the Prophets. On top of this though, Chief has said very little in CE. It feels like he said a lot more than he does in Halo 2. That also kind of goes for Cortana. Both of them felt like they had a lot more personality in the first game. A lot more humor, definitely. Though we get glimpses of that in the first mission, when we swap over to Arbiter, it becomes pretty clear that Chief and Cortana aren't really the focus anymore, and are just there to kinda shoot stuff. Meanwhile, Arbiter is there to be a character. It's also through Arbiter that the Covenant go from something that's just fun to shoot at to an intricate, interesting, and real organization. You understand them. You get what races like the Elites are about. We have a deeper understanding of how the Empire works in their history. There's a lot of great characters on both sides with Halo 2. Like I said, Chief and Cortana are a little bit toned down from CE, but we're given characters like Johnson, Artas, Miranda Keyes, Arbiter, and some fantastic villains with the Prophets and the Gravemind. The Prophets are really interesting antagonists and serve as cunning and ambitious villains, while Gravemind is definitely the big bad. All of them, every character is done so well. Speaking of these two, there's something I want to bring up. In Halo 1, I talked a lot about how much I love the Covenant, albeit they're not really integral to the story. Halo CE was the Flood's game, but in Halo 2, it's like it's been reversed. The Flood are there and they have an impact on the story, but it's really not about them. This is the Covenant's story. The Covenant completely outshine the Flood in every situation. Were it not for the reveal of the Gravemind, I feel like the Flood would have just kind of been there with no real reason. That's not to say they're bad, it just goes to show how good the Covenant is in this game. Halo 2 is a wonder for storytelling, and is easily the strongest in the franchise. Its epicness nearly matches Halo 3, its settings match Reach and Combat Evolved. Its emotional character moments match and probably surpass Halo 4. It does everything better than 5. And the free twists of this story, the reveal that you get to play as the Covenant in this game, I remember when I first experienced this and losing my mind. I love watching new people to the franchise get to this moment and seeing them lose their mind. The reveal that the Flood have a central intelligence, which was apparently a controversial one back in the day and people weren't happy with the big flappy model representing the Gravemind, but I agree with the modern consensus on this. It takes the Flood from pretty cool space zombies to something new entirely. They're capable of planning, of betrayal, of convincing you to work with them without infecting you, of goddamn driving! It's a menacing addition to the lore, and you begin to understand how the Forerunners couldn't defeat this force. And then you have the start of the Covenant Civil War, wonderfully executed. The slow build-up as you see the occasional squads of elites shooting at drones or brutes, building up to all-out war and experiencing that battle on the Halo with the Arbiter, it's a wonderful piece of storytelling and gameplay. On top of this though, like I said, Halo 2 is a lot more emotional, and it's not just about shooting stuff anymore. Halo 2 feels like it's out to deliver more with its story. Combat Evolved does what it sets out to do pretty well. It's a really fun story about shooting aliens on a new world with some wonderful twists. But Halo 2 is this really interesting and intricate look at religion. I might just be looking too deep into a game about funny aliens that say "wart, wart, wart" occasionally, but I think I'm raising a good point when you look at other people's reactions to this. A lot of people really sympathize and were helped by the Arbiter. You can find people talking about their experiences with religion and relating to Arbiter. I think Halo 2 says a lot more than what most people give it credit for. While it is a fantastic shooter game and gives you a wonderful sci-fi opera story, it's the themes of religion and losing your religious identity and becoming something new and unknown. It's the themes of forgiveness and understanding. I understand if you're not on board with that and you just want to shoot stuff, but for me and for quite a few other people, you can see just how much this game means. But what about the gameplay? How is it actually playing the story of Halo 2? Well, it's admittedly not as good as Combat Evolved in that aspect. While I praised Combat Evolved for its openness, Halo 2 is certainly far more linear and less open. The game funnels you through corridor after corridor, small room after small room. I can't recall a single branching path allowing for the player to choose what objective to complete first. On top of this, difficulty is noticeably and infamously screwed. Time to kill on nearly all Covenant units have been drastically decreased, and the introduction of the new Covenant species and infantry types can create often stressful and rage-inducing legendary runs, specifically brutes and jackal snipers. If a brute gets you in its melee range, it's over. And odds are, you will get in its melee range with how fast they run and how much damage they can tank. As for Jackal Snipe, I've said what I need to say about Jackal Snipers. Evil little creatures. All across the board, the Covenant AI has been improved, and shielded Jackal units no longer flee when you kill a brute or elite, making for a far more menacing and difficult Covenant. Halo 2 on Legendary is an experience Satan has been taking notes from. The weapons and vehicle sandbox is far larger than CE offered, but this creates a lot of identical weapons. The Carbine and Battle Rifle are weapons that pretty much fill the same niche on the battlefield. The Spectre is just a Covenant Warthog. There's no longer a single weapon for a single purpose. There's multiple doing what something else does, but slightly differently. Now, this may not necessarily be a downside for some people, and for me, it isn't. I really enjoy both the Carbine and the Battle Rifle. I like both the Beam Rifle and the Sniper Rifle. Halo 2, for me at least, has no unwelcome additions to the sandbox. And of course, it introduces plenty of new stuff as well. Weapons like the Brute Shot and the Energy Sword are entirely unique, and it helps that they're a ton of fun to use as well. I'll quickly wrap up my thoughts here on the campaign before moving on, because we actually do have something else to talk about with Halo 2. Halo 2 offers the single best story in all of Halo's games. It introduces a lot of new characters, all of which are interesting and enjoyable. Returning characters are also largely improved from CE, with maybe the exception of Chief and Cortana. The Arbiter is the best playable character Halo has ever given us. You cannot change my mind. The Covenant went from to... but it's also a noticeably incomplete and sometimes broken experience with its difficulty and other issues. The music, however, is so beautiful. I've gone back and forth on this, but honestly, Halo 2 has my favourite soundtrack of the series. There's some really nice and calming suites in there, alongside some of the most divine, blood-pumping pieces ever orchestrated. Bungie managed to incorporate the sickest guitar riffs into their music from people who just wanted to have their stuff be in Halo and were content with that. It may not have given us what Bungie promised, but what it did give us was variety, an introspective look at humanity, the Covenant and the Flood, a wider world, and a wonderful, wonderful story. This might not have been the game you wanted to make, Bungie. You might even see it as a failure. But in my opinion, Halo 2's story is phenomenal. Thank you for making it. Now on to the multiplayer. What about that warfare mode that Bungie had most of its people working on? It's not in the game in any shape or form. Imagine that. You know what's in the game? A refined and upscaled arena multiplayer based on the foundations laid down in Halo Combat Evolved and fully operational Xbox Live. Great going, Max Hoberman. Also, split screen is still in there. I feel like I should say that. If Halo CE's multiplayer was a fun and hectic time with friends, Halo 2's multiplayer is the sweaty realm of tryhards and button combos, which for the record is definitely not a negative thing. Halo 2's multiplayer was taken far more seriously, and a new weapon sandbox and maps definitely helped with that. Starting with precision weapons like the BR encouraged more skill-based and careful game styles rather than running in and spraying with the AR. That was still possible, of course, and the plethora of weapons Halo 2 offered all had their place, but the battle rifle was definitely king. And with Xbox Live, you could connect with anyone across the world over the internet to play with, which gave modes like Big Team Battle a time to shine, as now you wouldn't have to connect a whole bunch of Xboxes together. All you needed was 16 machines in any country connected to the internet, and 16-player games on maps like Coagulation were possible. It also offers a ton of game modes such as Oddball, Capture the Flag, Juggernaut, Assault, and a few ridiculous game modes like Phantoms where all the players were invisible, or Rockets where every player has a rocket launcher. The multiplayer caters to so many people, offering objective-based and kill-based game modes, and excelling at both of them with fantastic map design and weapon placement. Although Halo 2's multiplayer was not exempt of problems, as glitches were prevalent and often used to a player's advantage. Never has there been a better example of this than button combos. You know how fighting games have combos? Push a series of buttons to keep the hits going faster without slowing down and dealing more damage. Yeah, well, Halo 2 has that. Delayed reload, quick reload, double melee, double grenade, cancel reload, there's a ton. And a lot of pro players use this. It actually became a part of professional play. Oh yeah, professional play. Halo 2 was big in the MLG scene. It had a ton of tournaments and games with an insane amount of players, some still sticking around with the series to this day. Just as Halo CE's ideas had revolutionized the principles behind a shooter, Halo 2 had revolutionized the ideas behind shooter multiplayers, defining many techniques and principles that would be echoed for years to come. And on top of that, Halo 2's map selection was superb. There were some fantastic arena maps and some great open maps for intense small team and big team fights. Maps that, like with Halo CE, would find themselves being recreated in later games. And hey, this game had its fair share of CE map remakes, such as the previously mentioned Coagulation being a remake of Blood Gulch. Halo 2's multiplayer is a lot of people's favourites, and I can see why. It feels the most intense and one of the best fitted for pro play. Another thing I quickly want to commend is the sound design. A lot of weapons and vehicles feel beefier or far more deadly than they did in Halo CE, where many of the weapons just made funny pew-pew sounds. And there's some completely new sounds like the Hunter's new energy beam and the energy sword activation noise. It's just... It's been a strange experience writing this essay. The more I looked into how Halo 2 was made, the more I could see the telltale signs of pressure they were under, and that quite a bit of stuff was cut. And yeah, I would feel defeated if I was an artist and promised something but failed to deliver on that and meet my own expectations. But honestly, I don't think it's a particularly hot take to say Halo 2 is one of the best Halos. Hell, I'd say it did its job. And even though it may have disappointed Bungie, it was certainly bigger and better than Halo Combat Evolved in plenty of aspects. I'd rate Halo 2 just a bit above Halo CE. Halo 2 gave us so much, a deeper look into the world set up by CE, an understanding of both our foes, complicated relationships, and an interesting look into how religious fundamentalism has affected the character and his path and breaking away from that. The Battle for Earth sections are fun, but the Arbiter story is one of the greatest sections of storytelling and gameplay moments from the entire franchise. And if that wasn't enough to give us some great Chief moments and a new character who many believe are just as cool as Chief, it also gave us one of the best multiplayer experiences ever! Halo 2 may have been misleading. It may have been an incomplete vision, but it wasn't a failure. Halo 2 had some promises left unkept, but it certainly delivered one of the best experiences in gaming of all time. Hello, it's me again, just wanting to wish everyone the best safety possible during this really weird time, and thank you so much for sticking through this thinly veiled excuse to rant about Arbiter for an hour. I really hope you all enjoyed it, and if you did, please leave a like. If you want to be notified for when we make our next videos, then you can always subscribe and click the notification bell if you want to be notified immediately for when we start uploading stuff. If you want to support what we do, we have a Patreon where you can donate however much you want to get early access to webcomic pages and new videos. Thank you so much to Saw244 for donating already. Really looking forward to the next video. I've got a lot to say about Halo 3. I hope I see you all there and I hope you will enjoy it. But until then, see ya.